So this is Christian School Management's webinar on management structure and how we organize our schools. Christian School Management's mission is for Jesus through mission with students, and we're quite committed to all three. We want to honor the Lord in all that we do. We want to honor your school's mission and encourage you to fulfill it. And we're always focused on students and what is best for students. My name is Brian Hazeltine. I am currently working as a consultant with Christian School Management as well as a professor in the graduate program at Cornerstone University. I've spent most of my 50 years in Christian school administration as a teacher, principal, superintendent, and now consultant and professor. So I love it. I'm passionate about it. I think that what we do in Christian schools changes the world. And so this is how I'm spending the latter part of my years, is to expand the kingdom through Christian schools. So let me get you started with what we're focusing on. There are a lot of books out there about leadership, probably a lot more than there are about management. Leadership seems to have the glory. It's where we inspire people, we cast vision, we talk about where we want to go and why it's important, and we encourage people and engage people to join in the battle. Management, however, is how we get from where we are to where we want to go. They determine the route. They ensure that it's the right kind of bus that we're getting everybody on, right number of seats, the right kind of seats, and the right mix of seats. What it is not is this kind of bus, where everybody is in the exact same size seat and they're all faced in the same direction, and it doesn't matter where you sit, basically, the view is going to be the same. It's probably a little bit more like this one, where everybody has some choices as to the view that they get, and it's a little bit more organized. Or it could be like this one, which is lots of fun. You get to be in the outdoors, or you can be sheltered away. The point is that in a Christian school, there are different groups of people with different tasks, and getting them organized in the most effective fashion is really important. So some preliminary thoughts. One, we are not looking at boards here. We're not looking at how the board runs the school. We will talk a little bit about the board and their connection to it, but the focus of this particular concept of management structure has to do with the head of school and on down from there. So it's everything that the head of school is responsible for, as opposed to what the board is responsible for. There are some tie-ins with board committees, and we'll talk about that as we get there. The other thing is that all schools, whether you're small, medium, or large, you actually have these three teams at work. And so this three-team model is not something that we've created. It's rather something that we've uncovered as we've worked with schools and helped them to rationalize their organization. It became clear that there are these very three distinct teams functioning in every school. Of the three, advancement's probably the least understood, and so we'll spend more time talking about that. And I'm going to provide enough detail that the larger school, those of 350 and beyond, will feel comfortable and realize, okay, we've addressed all of their needs. Smaller schools won't use and have all of the positions of a larger school, but it's easier to delete those positions than it is to try to imagine what they might be. So we're going to focus primarily on what it would look like in its fully fleshed out manner. The roles that people play are obviously more important than their titles, but titles matter. The words that we use change how we perceive people. Think of the difference between fundraising and philanthropy. Fundraising, by its nature, talks about how we can get money in. We're trying to raise money. Philanthropy, at its root, has to do with the love of man. And so the focus is on generosity and giving. And so even those terms, whether you have a fundraising director or a philanthropy director, changes how we perceive their role and the work that they do. So we'll talk a little bit about the titles. You'll see them used in the various charts that are going to come up later. But generally, head of school is the CEO, reports directly to the board, the only employee of the board. And then below that, we have positions that we would call a principal or director. These are people who not only supervise others, but they hire and fire. That's their responsibilities. Below the directors, we have managers. They will supervise, but they don't hire and fire, and then everybody comes below that. Compensation would be something that we would look at if we would come onto your school site and work with you specifically about your needs. We would look at all of the positions that you might need, as well as how we refer to them, as well as the kind of compensation that they get compared to people in other roles. Good org charts matter. It's very helpful to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish it. And very often schools don't actually follow the org charts that they have. So if we were to come on site with you, we would look at what's actually happening, compare it to your org chart, and then we would talk about what is it you want to do, what is it, how should this look, so that everybody understands what their role is, where they fit in the school, and to whom they report. All right. We won't be able to have time to give you summaries of these jobs. I'll touch on one or two briefly, but job descriptions are available at the CSM website. You can go there. If you're a member, you have access to our library, of course, and so you can get job descriptions for all these positions there. So we encourage you to do that. All right, so here are the teams. Nothing too magical about this, but the academic team is what we refer to as mission delivery. We are very mission focused. What is it that God has called us to do? How can we best do that? This is the instructional team. This is the principal, the teachers, the staff members, all of the people who are working directly with the children. They have a face-to-face relationship with children throughout the day, and that's their goal. They do the instructions. They're responsible for curriculum, those kinds of things. There are two other really important teams. Most schools are aware of this one. There's the business team. They look after the money. We call this mission protection. No schools these days fail because of, the buildings aren't quite up to snuff, or the textbooks are old, or the technology is old, or even that the head of school runs off with the secretary. They fail 99% of the time because of an inability to manage the money. So the mission protection is absolutely critical. It's vital that people understand how to do that. Not only that it's their job to do it, but how to do it in a way that will keep the school and sustain it over the long haul. And then finally, advancement. This is your mission expansion team. And very few people get an education in mission advancement or mission expansion through their master's program. They will get material on instruction and curriculum and assessment and probably school finance. But in terms of what we have to do in Christian schools, we need to generate a lot of funds beyond tuition in order to move the school forward. And this group is not primarily focused on meeting a gap between tuition and the operational costs of the school, because we believe that all of the operational costs should be covered through tuition. And so the work of the philanthropy committee and the advancement team and mission expansion team is to move the school forward by adding technology, by adding a wing to the classrooms, by adding a gymnasium, by developing a science lab, an auditorium, whatever it is. But it's always looking to the future to move the school from where it is today to something bigger and better down the line. All right. So in the simplest org chart fashion, this is what that looks like. You have the head of school with an executive assistant that's managing dates and times and emails and calendars and all that good stuff. And you have these three teams that work. Now, as I said, every school has these teams, but they look very differently depending on the size of the school. In a small school, so that school that's 150 or less, um, everything is done by volunteers, basically. You can't afford to hire all of the positions that you might need. And so parent volunteers look after bookkeeping and maintenance and all the various fundraising events that we do in schools. And we want to eliminate most of those, basically all except maybe one per year. But it's volunteers. We can't afford to pay people. And the principal and those who are paid they do this work as well. And again, there's not a separate job. So the principal is the primary communicator, the primary person who speaks to donors and connects with them, manages public relations, and probably teaches part-time as well. In your middle-sized schools, so that's the 150 to 350 range or so, By then, the principal has moved on into full-time administration, probably are now paying at least part-time staff for bookkeeping, data management, maintenance, and some people refer to them as a development officer. We would say a philanthropy director, something like that, responsible for marketing and outreach to prospective parents and to donors. So as we move to the larger school, 350 and beyond, then we now have full-time staff in these positions. You'll have a full-time business manager. You probably have a building and grounds manager, data, annual fund marketing, and philanthropy director who looks after all of those people, or most of those people, not necessarily the business manager. So all of these positions grow and develop as schools get larger. And of course, we don't need them when we're small, but it's important to be thinking about what we might need as we grow. So as we're hiring people, we bring them on with an understanding that they're going to work themselves into one of these three teams. And so thinking about the skill set that they have and the abilities and responsibilities that they demonstrate as an employee, then we think about, okay, they will move over into this team and therefore they will report to this person, or they will become a director to whom others report. So knowing about the teams in advance, even when you're small, is helpful. So now we're going to look at each of these teams in a little bit more detail. So mission delivery, this is the one that we're most familiar with. This is instruction, curriculum, assessment, all the standardized testing. This is taking care of kids and their feelings and their relationships with one another, the emotional growth, spiritual formation. Do they know the Lord? Have they made a commitment to follow Christ in their own lives? And if so, how can we grow them in that respect? What about their future? So college, career, vocation. Coaches have a hugely important part to play in children's lives. And so the entire athletic department, that's part of mission delivery. Even though it has a public relationship value, it's primarily working with kids. Now, the board connection here is through the head stewardship committee. Now, CSM teaches that the board should have 5 standing committees. They can set up ad hoc ones for special purposes, but by and large, there should be 5 standing committees. And one of those is the head stewardship committee. This is a committee that I wish I'd had it as an administrator when I was head of a school. So the board connection is not with the mission delivery people per se, other than through the head. The head stewardship committee encourages the head, holds the head accountable, provides the resources in terms of finance or professional development to ensure that the head is healthy and understands the mission of the board and the vision and the direction and has the support to move the school forward. But other than that, the board is not involved with mission delivery. They are not involved with the daily instruction and education of the kids. They don't choose the textbooks. They don't choose the methodology that teachers use. Those things are decided by the head of school, other leadership members, and teachers in the classroom. Mission protection, critical part. This is your finance committee in some schools. Um, Everybody involved with the budget, developing the budget, raising funds for the annual fund. In other words, closing that, not the gap, but the need for moving the school forward, adding funds to the program. Maybe it's a capital campaign. Maybe it's adding a new program to the school, something that hasn't existed before. All of that, your bookkeeping. So collecting your tuition, paying your salaries, covering all of your vendors, insurance, dealing with not only fire and theft, but making sure that you have business continuance insurance, that your data is protected against theft or loss. Strategic financial management. This has to do particularly with looking ahead, not just at this year or next year, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. I was appointed as head of school over a school that had an immediate need for a new roof, and it was going to be about a $40,000 expenditure. There had been no money set aside for it, so we were scrambling to bring those funds in. But if we know that the roof needs to be replaced in 10 years, we should be putting money aside for that now. we know when we get a new roof in that it'll probably last 20 years or 30 years. And so we should be putting that money aside over a 30-year period. It could be a boiler or other major um, building expenditures. This is the plant repair and maintenance part of strategic financial management. And again, we have to be planning for that ahead of time. That's all part of the business uh, team, the mission protection team. HR, so making sure that you've hired qualified people, that they have contracts in place, that you are meeting the requirements of federal and state governments in terms of your legal obligations, of your health and safety and fire, all of that stuff. The board connection here is through two committees. So these are two of the standing committees that I mentioned before, which is the Finance Committee and the Buildings and Grounds Committees. Both of those committees will be connecting with the business team because the business team needs to know what is the board's vision, what is the board's plan, what is it that we're working towards over the long haul. And the board needs to know what are the dollars and cents that are going to impact their planning as they think and look ahead. How much money do we have in the bank? How much savings do we have? Are we covering all these things? Because at the end of the day, the board is responsible for the financial security of the school. Now, the last uh, team is your advancement team or mission expansion. And this is focused on enrollment growth, first and foremost, bringing those students in who should be in our schools. If we have empty seats, then we have failed in our mission. Um, and if we have a huge waiting pool, then we failed in our vision. So you can't get it exactly right in every case, but the advancement team should be looking at how do we grow the school numerically, because that's fundamentally what we're all about is teaching children. We have to have them in the seats to do that. Philanthropy. So completely responsible for bringing in the money that we need, whether it's individual donors or whether it could be a fundraising event. Again, we don't recommend anything more than one fundraising event over the course of the year. If there are facilities to be improved, we need new carpets throughout, we need new technology throughout, anything that's going to move the school forward from where it is to where it needs to be. And then family relations, because the most important donors in our school, the people who are going to give the most and give the most consistently year after year, are indeed our parents. And that is the group that's invaluable to us. And so, beyond simply getting our new parents into the school, we need to continue to maintain those relationships to ensure that they're fully engaged with the school, whether it's through volunteering or donating or prayer, all of these things. And that's part of the mission expansion group. They are responsible to connect families with the school, to tell families about what the school is doing so the families are in the know about the great things that are happening in the lives of their children. So two more committees here. Sorry, not two more, but one more, the Philanthropy Committee of the board. They work with this team, obviously. And again, building and grounds, because if we're talking about expansions or physical plant improvement, then they need to be connected. And the last committee of the board is the board stewardship committee. I'll just mention that in passing, but their job is to make sure that the board stays on track, that the board adheres to their own standards, their own mission statement, and gets the professional development that the board needs. So those are the five standing committees. So those are the three teams. Now let's look at how this works out. So a little bit more, as I said, I want to give you a little bit more detail on the mission expansion team. We won't go into the other ones, but this is the least understood. So we want to look at this in a little bit more depth. One of the key ideas here is that everybody in the school is responsible for mission expansion. There are some people that that's basically the only thing they do, but it is part of the job description of every teacher, every coach, every secretary, every clerk, every janitor, every bus driver to promote the school to the existing families, to prospective families, and to the public at large. We are all part of this team to grow the school and expand the kingdom of God. Expanding the kingdom of God into the lives of children is not just the responsibility of the principal and the advancement director. We're all part of this team. And so that's that involves some training of our staff, talk about, well, how can you do that? What does that mean for a bus driver? What does that mean for a custodian? What does that mean for teachers and secretaries? It's a big deal. And so we work with schools to help them develop their advancement team, their mission expansion team. And again, when you're small, a lot of this will be done by volunteers. So parents are going to run pretty well everything. They probably do the website and they take prospective parents on the tours. They help the principal in any fundraising events or with enrollment paperwork. They are the primary movers in this area. Now, as a school gets larger, you're going to be able to hire professionals not to do the work, but to help coordinate all of those volunteers. We don't want to say, oh, well, now we've got people hired to do promotion and marketing. We don't need our parents anymore. We don't need our teachers to engage with our parents. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay? We need people who will continually talk about the school, promote the school to neighbors and friends, whether it's on a sports team or it's in the neighborhood itself or at church, so that we're all working together to grow the school. The professionals are hired in to coordinate that. And so they're not going to do all the work, but they will lead it, they will direct it, they will promote it, they will ensure that the message is consistent throughout the school. They will ensure that one donor is not asked 3 different times for the same event. That's their job. Okay? So that's really important. Here are some of the rules, and we can't go into it in much detail here, but I want to talk about these particular people that you would have working in your school. Many schools have what are typically called the admissions director or admissions coordinator. We want to move away from that because the focus of that terminology is get them in the school. Once you get them in the school, then your job is done. You don't have to do any more work in that regard. And we're saying, no, 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 we are not about simply bringing people into the school. We are about developing a relationship with families that will last a lifetime. It will last not only K through 12 for your first child, but K through 12 for your fourth child. So probably about 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe 20 years with your children. And then as they become alumni, and then they have children who then enroll, and then you start seeing your educational grandkids coming in through the school, which is a wonderful thing to see. And so the family relations manager works with families from their very first point of contact, whether it's an email or a telephone call, all the way up through graduation and into becoming part of the alumni family. So it's a much broader term. So we really like that terminology as far as what that person's role is. The database manager, we'd actually say this is your first hire. You need a technician, somebody who loves data, who understands the power of data, who can generate reports for the head of school, for the business office, for the board, for the advancement people, so that we know who's engaged, who's doing what, who's attended, who's volunteered, what are the skill sets available, who's given how much and when and how often, and how can we engage them, who might be considering a large leadership gift. All of those things come through the database manager. Hugely important person. And then the annual fund manager, this has to do with bringing the donors and connecting them to the school so that they can find ways that they can support the school financially. And so it's not just a lot of fundraising events. There may be one big fundraising event, which is a celebration time, maybe a banquet or an auction, just lots of fun, getting people connected, and an opportunity to donate to the school. But bringing those donations in, showing people the needs, where they are, what funds are needed to meet those needs. Maybe there's a capital campaign going. And again, capital campaigns get discussed all the time over multiple years. Other projects might be a 1 year thing. Our goal is to have a new computer lab by the end of the funds in place by the end of this year. We will build it over the summer so that it's ready for the next school year. And so you present that to families and let them know throughout the year. And again, engaging people as part of that project so that they can support the ministry with giving and getting connected to people that they know that might be interested in supporting the school. So that's a big part of that. And then the philanthropy director is overseeing all of those people. Again, as you get bigger and you realize that the head of school cannot manage this many people, then you bring in a philanthropy director. So this is how this works, and this shows you the board connection. So head of school, executive assistant, mission delivery. As I said before, there is no direct connection with mission delivery and the board. The board has no role in mission delivery. They do have a role in mission protection, so through the finance committee and the building and grounds committee. Those are the two board committees that are going to be intimately involved with your business manager, your bookkeeper, anything that has to do with the financing of the school. And then for mission expansion, the two board committees are the philanthropy committee. So they're working with donors. Board members often will be involved in engaging some of your leadership donors, along with the head of school. And again, the building and grounds committee. That's the connection with the teams. And it's helpful for the board to realize this as well. Simply laying this out in an org chart is very helpful to visualize what is this thing supposed to look like when we're all done. Well, this is how the board connects to these things. All right, so now we're going to look at org charts specifically for the three teams. And as I mentioned, this would work for a larger school. Smaller schools would delete some of the levels, delete some of the positions as appropriate. But if you're a larger school, 350, 400 or more, this is what that would likely look like. So you have your elementary principal, secondary principal, and athletic director. Those would be the beginning positions. And you may have a philanthropy director and others that come in. But mission delivery is just these three, principals and athletic director. Those are primary. Now you could have, in addition to elementary and secondary, you might have a hybrid school or homeschooling program. So major programs that require some leadership, you could have a hybrid school principal, for example, or classical school principal. And again, depending on your size, you might have an assistant principal, but those people are responsible for the teachers, and the athletic director is responsible for the coach or the coaching staff. All right, mission protection. So this is your business team, head of school. You see a tie in now with in the purple there, the finance, building and grounds committee of the board. They would work with your finance and operations director. The finance and operations director reports to the head of school. They don't report to the committee, but they work with the committee. And underneath the finance and operations director, you see there's no line coming down from the committee of the board. They don't supervise these people. They work with the finance and operations director and the head of school. But reporting to the finance and operations director, you have your business manager, human resources, IT, facilities, and then you may have people below them, data clerks, assistant bookkeepers, IT assistants, and the like. And then finally, we move to the mission expansion team. And again, you have a position here in the green, the philanthropy director. You have board committees that would work with that person, philanthropy committee and the building and grounds committee of the board. And the people who would report to the philanthropy director would be people like your annual fund manager, database manager, family relations manager. And again, any of these could have assistants. I've just thrown in an admissions assistant and a marketing assistant underneath the family relations as examples. But depending on the complexity of your school, those kinds of things, you could have different positions filling in there. All right, so let me move to another topic, which is how many people should report to the head of school. This is the actual org chart. They didn't have this org chart created, but after interviewing the principal of the school, this is what he explained was happening. There were 11 people reporting to the head of school, or 10. That's too many. And so good management structure says no head of school should have more than 5 to 7 direct reports. And so anywhere in there is workable, but this is too many. And so in talking to the principal of that school, we were able to shuffle things around, move people around into little more rational organization. And what it came up with was this when we were done. You have your head, there was an elementary principal, secondary principal, there was a hybrid school in this case, and the athletic director. And then you have your two other finance and operations director and philanthropy director who cover the missions protection and missions expansion. Again, there's always going to be more people in the mission delivery. And so you need a principal for every 25 teachers or so. That's our rule of thumb. And so if you have more than 25 teachers, let's say in the elementary school, then you're going to need to have an assistant principal. Or if you get too many principals, you may need to have a superintendent over the principals who then reports to the head of school. Now, as people are hired, sometimes it can feel like a demotion. Like I used to report to the head of school, and now I have to report to somebody else. Well, yes, this is what happens as schools grow and with more staff and more complexity, everybody cannot keep reporting to the principal. And so, whereas with a small school, less than 150, perhaps 10 or 12 teachers, then everybody's reporting to the principal. But as you move into 400 plus students and the number of people involved in that school, changes have to be made. And so it's not a demotion, it's just a rationalization and reorganization. But this is much more workable. And the principal breathed a sigh of relief when we showed them that this would be a better way of organizing this. And of course, you have to get the right people into those positions. And the principals know their people. We don't recommend individuals for a slot. We just say these are the slots and the roles that you need. So the CSM three-team model says that there are three mission-oriented teams in your school: delivery, protection, expansion. As I mentioned, the delivery is always going to be your biggest and your most expensive. It is closest to the child, and that's where we want to spend our money, where it's close to the child. Mission protection, those are the resources that we need to make sure that the school can function, to make sure that the lights are on, the bills are paid. And as I said, we've been in schools where it was very doubtful whether they would be able to finish the year because of financial mismanagement. And it's just a shame. It just does not need to happen. We're glad to be able to work with schools to help you to sort through that. Better to call us in when it's not a problem than when it is. But and then mission expansion, this is where the growth comes. This is where you're moving forward. This is the stuff that's really exciting, and it's thinking ahead to the next generation of children. And so not just who we have now, but who we might have in our schools. The three-team model really formalizes the reality that exists in our schools already, but it does enable us to be more efficient and more effective as an organization when everybody understands what their role is, they understand to whom they report, they understand how they relate to the other teams in the school. The board understands how they are connected to these teams and that they're not connected to the mission delivery team. And so once you see this and you work through it as a school, then everybody starts just working better together because they stay in their lane. It aligns your resources with your mission and your goals. People are doing what God has called them to do, doing what God has gifted to do, and the school moves forward more effectively that way. And it guides you in your hiring. So as you're thinking about hiring and you know you're growing, then those positions need to change. And you may need to have some conversations with people in their current roles and say, look, I know you're doing this and that. You're doing data management and the website. You've got to make a choice here. I know you're good at both, but we really need more time spent on the data management. And so of these other tasks that you're doing, what would you give up or what can we get you to move over? And this really belongs over here. Data management is a business team function, and the uh, marketing is part of the advancement team. So, and at the end of the day, what this does is it frees the head of school to do what the head of school is called to do. And chief among those is to think and develop vision of what God wants the school to do next. Where are we headed? How do we get there? How do I, as a head of school, bring my particular insights to motivate and educate and delegate people in a way that will move the school into its next phase? Let me just finish with a couple of slides here. One, I just want to mention the services that we provide as an organization. Um, Hopefully you're getting the free weekly newsletter already, but if you become a member, you get access to hundreds of articles on the website there. And some of those articles will literally save you thousands of dollars. I've gone through some and I thought, oh, if I'd only known this as a head many, many years ago. Number of service that we provide, surveys. I put an asterisk here. It's something that I'm particularly involved in. If you use our surveys and you want to get some input as to how to interpret the data and apply the data, what's important, what isn't, help with looking for the patterns and understanding how to make sense of the data, then I'm available to do that with you. Strategic planning, strategic financial management. This is the heart of what we do, helping boards and administration to think about where they want to go over the next 5 years and what are the dollars involved in helping you to get there. Certainly enrollment and retention, critical part of what we do. Management structure analysis, that's what we've been talking about today. So that's my particular area. So if you wanted to work with us, we would come. I wouldn't, you don't need to come. It's all done online. So I would meet with you online. I would look through a lot of your materials, your org charts, positions, a lot of different things, and work with you to develop an organizational chart and a management structure that would actually enable you to move forward. Particularly useful when schools are growing or schools are declining, or there have been mergers, or you've added programs. Now you're going to offer a high school, two schools are merging together. A lot of different reasons why, or maybe it's just been 50 years since the school was founded and somebody needs to come in and take a look at this with fresh eyes. It's a good way to get involved with CSM. It's not hugely expensive, so that may be a good thing for you to consider. And we will be sending you out a recording and a link with a couple questions for some feedback from me. And I hope to follow up with you as well individually just to connect and say if I can help you out. Any questions you might have after you had some time to think about it, be glad to help. All of these things are services that we provide. We're glad to do it. We love to work with schools. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. And we also have books. So these are great for board development. The Christian School Handbook is going to be out very shortly in its third edition. Encourage you to get that, work through it with your board. But there are a lot of books. This is the largest group of books on Christian school management from any publisher in the world right now. The latest one is this one I've been reading on philanthropy. Hugely valuable book. So I encourage you to consider picking that up. That's one of the more recent ones. And with that, I will leave you with one final slide here. This is not for discussion today because we just don't have time for it. But these are questions you can take back to your staff. What major divisions does your school currently have? How might you change them or restructure them to be more effective? What do you have that might be superfluous? And what are you going to need sooner rather than later as you move forward? And there's a link here. Can't get it off here, but just a reminder that the membership in CSM is less than $10 a month. It's a very good deal. It will repay you many times over. And once you have that membership as a school, you can share the articles with anybody in the school. And they come out once a week. Very, very useful. As I said, you get access to the library.